This is kind of funny, so I'm going to start with this. As I started the video, he went up and laid down. He was actually wandering around, and then as soon as he sees me stand here, he goes, "All right, I got to take my position as well." So they're well trained. They're well directed cats. Um, so news of the day, and of course the NHL GM meetings. We always get some news out. So there's a few topics on the board that are coming out of that, and the first thing I want to talk about is there will be no change to the emergency backup policy. So since David Ayres went in, certain people in hockey have not been kind about David Ayres being in there. He's on a list of goaltenders. So they have a list of, I think they said it was 136 or 138 goaltenders that are approved by the NHL to be emergency backup goalies. There is a procedure in place. So coming out of this, there may be teams that look at their emergency situation and say, we might want somebody else, somebody from, for instance, the Canucks has been UBC goaltenders for the most part, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we may see teams bring in somebody else, but there won't be any change. And I think what bothers me, and I know this has bothered other people, so I'm going to throw this out there. David Ayres is not a beer league goaltender. It's something that, and again, I know Brian Burke keeps saying it. He's not a beer league goaltender. Yes, he's older. Uh-huh. And as somebody who's also older, it's harder to stay in shape as you get older, so I commend the guy for being able to do all of that as a goaltender in his 40s. And in all honesty, he did a decent enough job in a backup, in a really tough backup spot as the number 3 guy. And he's not beer league. This is one of those things that it's not like Carolina had, both goalies get hurt and they're like, okay, the guy in row 4, he came in today. He had a goalie mask, didn't he? We'll just put him in that. That's not what happens. It's not how this works. So could the Leafs end up changing up who their number 3 is in the building? Sure. Could there be a situation where both teams have 2 goaltenders hurt in the same game? It's possible, but it is so remote. So yeah, the NHL's not changing it, and neither should they. This is not something that needed to be changed at all. I think it's just, people who get mad about this, I don't understand it. It is so rare. It's so very, very rare. And could they have changed it? Maybe, but I'm kind of glad they didn't. This is one of those things where you go, oh, how is the NHL going to take the fun out of this? And they actually said, yeah, we're not taking the fun out of this. So they get the point. And apparently what was discussed as well is that all of this media attention south of the border in the U.S. is good. They're like all this media attention where it feels like an everyman story. It's a good story. Why should we destroy it? Why should we set that on fire? It's a good story. Speaking of good stories and them being thrown out the window, the St. Louis Blues have committed what you can qualify as a faux pas. Now, they're getting absolutely dragged over Twitter today. And I get it. So hockey is for everyone. This is Hockey is for Everyone related. So there's people who are going to just skip over to the next thing I'm going to talk about. But I kind of... Okay, so you have in February of Black History Month, where we talk about black hockey players throughout NHL history. I didn't do any videos on it this month because I didn't see any need for me to do videos on things that the NHL wasn't already discussing, and that I wasn't already seeing on Sportsnet, and I wasn't already seeing on Fox Sports. And I thought, well, I don't really have anything to add to this. They haven't already said, so bravo to them. And with the upcoming game between St. Louis and Chicago, where it'll be an all-women's broadcast team. I think that's great as well. And the hockey is for everyone mentality is to me, I get it, and it's important. But there is that very vocal minority that they hate it. They hate anything to do with it. So the St. Louis Blues have found a way to make sure everybody's angry by having their Hockey is for Everyone night a road game. So you can go to the Blues home building and watch a road game on a big screen on Hockey is for Everyone night on March 24th. So they're getting dragged over this. And I get it. I do. It does look bad. You would almost be better off if you're St. Louis just to not say anything. You might be better off just to have posts on social media, players can go out there with rainbow colored tape on their sticks for one night and just not really, because this to me is kind of worse, because now you're saying, all right, hockey's for everyone night, which will still offend the people that don't like that whole message, but you're doing it for a road game that will make people mad who like the message, so that way nobody's happy. Good job. Good job by a team that PR-wise, after winning the Stanley Cup, you would think would have all kinds of PR slack, and it's almost like somebody said, how can we possibly wreck it? I got an idea. Oh, there's nothing we can do to wreck this. Yeah. So I've seen some silliness too. I've seen some people posting they'll never wear a Blues jersey again, and I'm like, yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. This is where it gets silly, and I'll discuss that again later. So the offside rule, remember, I've been talking about this for how many years, where I'm like, you know what, who cares if the skate's on the ice? Who cares if the skate's on the ice? Maybe I did storm into Boca Raton yesterday, and I got back in time for the videos last night. Maybe I did. Because they're talking about, they've recommended changing it. Skate down, skate up, it doesn't matter. As long as the skate breaks the plane. And now there's people go like, it's going to be really hard to tell if the skate breaks the plane. Yeah. Yeah. This whole idea that a whole goal should be called back because 45 seconds earlier somebody was half of an inch offside, it honestly, it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts when I watch a game and there's a really nice goal and it was really nicely set up, and then you'll hear it plays under review, and it's like, what? No, why? And then it's, oh well, that was an inch offside or half an inch offside, and I'm like, or skates in the air. I'm like, seriously, because the skate's in the air? Yeah, that's clearly offside. His skate's in the air, but his foot's breaking the plane of the line. Come on, this is ridiculous. So they've recommended amending it, changing it. And that'll be for next year. So hopefully that gets rid of some of these offside challenges, which just get it just, again, it doesn't affect the play. I think offside was meant to be for when it affects the play and you're getting an advantage. These guys aren't getting an advantage because their foot's in the air. It's not. Well, I'll tell you what worked. There's no way we would have scored that goal, but Barney had his foot in the air at the blue line 45 seconds earlier, totally threw the defending team off because they could see his foot was in the air. So thanks to Barney there, yeah, we got the goal. So thanks, Barney, because you had your foot in the air. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. Stupid Barney. Anyways. Never liked the dinosaur. Yeah, you can tell him I said it. I don't care. So, Leafs fans, you want some good news? Here's some good news. So, Cody Cece's going to be back, and Morgan Riley are going to be back. And there's word that they could be back as early as next week. So, that's good news for the Leafs. They've started winning some games, and now they could very well be getting healthy on the blue line. And Morgan Riley being back will be a huge boost to that team. Absolutely. So yeah, and I don't really have a way to segue into the next item, so I will just go into it. So last night, Nashville, after the game was finished, the teams, both Edmonton and Nashville, got out without any incident, but there was a tornado that tore through the city. Last report, there are 19 that have passed on. Many more injuries as well. So what Bridgestone Arena is doing, what the Nashville Predators are doing, they're opening up the building for tornado victims. There are a lot of people that have been left homeless, hundreds left homeless by this. So they've opened it up. It's free pizza. It's you can get indoors, have some sense of normalcy through this, and this is the kind of thing where, out of tragedies like that, we do see the best in people, and it's one of those reasons that I still have a lot of faith in mankind, is that we do see the best from people. So. I would hope that if you're living in the area that you're okay, and that if for those who've lost their homes, hopefully, this is when all that insurance stuff comes in, and you hope everybody has the proper home insurance. They're going to be able to rebuild. That there's always really bad situations that end up coming out of this that are, beyond the obvious, which is the fatalities, which is horrible. And then there's the other ones too, where you'll see that they just lose everything and they have to start over from scratch. So, My heart goes out to them, and I would imagine before the next Predators home game, they're on the road tonight, before the Predators' next home game, I would think they'll do something for that, and I would watch for fundraisers for the Nashville Predators, and I would imagine there will be a lot of those where the Predators are raising money for victims in this case. So out of tragedy, it will usually reveal the character in people. Again, transitioning into that story and transitioning out of it is awkward. So with apologies, I will move on to the next item on the board. Peter Mrazek, if you're a Carolina fan, apparently he will be back in 7 to 10 days, according to Don Waddell, which leads me to think Rod Brindamore, who's like, oh, they're going to be out for a long time. Maybe that wasn't a timeline. And maybe he's just ticked off in the moment. So apparently Mrazek's not that far out, which would explain why they didn't panic and go out and get a goaltender right away. I know for some Carolina fans that'll be not a great reason, but right, because it's still like weeks worth of games without a number one goaltender. But I would say Forsberg's played pretty well since coming up. Nedeljkovic has played pretty well. I don't think they've been the problem in Carolina, and so we'll see how long Mrazek's out. And if it's just Mrazek that comes back, which goalie do they keep? I'm thinking you keep Forsberg and send Nedeljkovic back down. But things could change between now and when Mrazek comes back. Speaking of goaltenders coming back, apparently Grubauer is about 2 weeks out, maybe less. They're talking about a mid-March return for him, which again would indicate why they didn't feel the need to go out and do anything other than picking up Hutchinson. And this is where, fan bases will get kind of upset and ticked off. But at the end of the day, Colorado's only 1 point out of first in the division. And Francouz has been fantastic, and Hutchinson won a game last night when he went in. That's what matters. Just does the backup win when he goes in there? All right. The rest of the stats aren't important. So and for Hutchinson, while he was unceremoniously dumped by the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was pretty good the last, I'll say, 6 or 8 weeks he was there. I think he had one bad start in the last 8 weeks he was there, out of I think 4 or 5. So he was pretty good. It just they wanted to upgrade, so they went with Campbell. And speaking of panic, I'm going to finish this part with the Canucks, and then I'll get into this too. And the panic right now surrounding the Canucks, which is where I think my separation from other Canuck fans is. So the criticism a few weeks ago was that I wasn't praising them enough, even though their record wasn't that great. Where I was looking at it and going, well, they're not playing that well right now. I'm not sure. But again, the excitement in Vancouver is that for the first time since 2015, it looks like they're going to make the playoffs, right? And so, barring something horrible, they should make the playoffs. And then something horrible, which was Markstrom getting hurt, happens. Now, the problem I had with the Canucks during a lot of their wins was simple. They were allowing too many shots. They were allowing too many prime shots. And they were relying on Markstrom too much to bail them out. And the response that I normally was getting was, you know what, who cares? Who cares? They're winning the games, who cares? Stop talking about that, who cares? Now, what's interesting is now they've lost a few games. They've lost 3 in a row. Now they've dropped down to a wild card spot, and now there's just panic. There's this whole panic that seems to be taking over. And I'm not on the panic side of things either, because and we'll do a panic index tomorrow to discuss that. But I'm not really panicked. Like if the Canucks fall out of the playoffs this year, they get their number 1 draft pick back, the one that they traded to Tampa, they get that back. It's a pretty good draft, so if they end up drafting in the top 10, with how good this team is right now, that might actually benefit them next year. I don't see the Canucks right now as a contending team anyways. So to me, it's a situation where I'd like to see them find a way to keep Toffoli. I love the development of a guy like Quinn Hughes. I'm encouraged by Demko, but I don't think Demko's ready yet. So as long as they can keep Markstrom. So there's money they have to get rid of this summer. There are guys I'd like to see them keep, like Markstrom, like Toffoli. But if they don't, I'm not panicked. I've been watching this team since 1981. I am used to 2 things with the Canucks. 1, liking their players, and 2, watching them disappoint me at the end of it. And it's never, there's no situation where I can look back over the almost 40 years now of watching this team and say, but that year they really came through, because it hasn't. There's always been that disappointment, whether it's Game 7 in 2011, Game 7 in 1994, the Stanley Cup Final in 82 when I was a little kid, and I thought they're going to do it. And I didn't realize what they were up against with the Islanders because I was a little kid. And then I was like, oh, the Islanders I hate them. And then that stuck with me for a while after that, where I just hated the Islanders for what they did to the poor Canucks. But they were the first good team the Canucks had played in the playoffs that year. So it just waited till the final before it happened. All the good teams got knocked out in the first round that year. I'm not panicked. I kind of, my reaction to the Columbus game was, of course, yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fine. And I don't know. I don't know if someday they finally come through and I sit there watching TV and I go, did they just win it? Did we just go through this? Or if for the rest of my life I feel like I'm cheering on a team of stormtroopers. I don't know. But I'm not overly panicked. I don't, I was actually honestly encouraged by how well I thought Domingue played in the last game. I don't blame Demko for them having slow starts. I think what's happened is their defense has been suspect for months, and Markstrom's been aware of it, and he's been really holding it together. So it definitely made their record look better than what I think the team was, and it really does give some amazing negotiating power to Jacob Markstrom. All right. The last item I wanted to talk about is something the GMs, it was brought up by Jarmo Kekalainen, where he's had a couple of injuries this year, according to him, via cross-checks. Cross-checks are an epidemic in the NHL. GMs watch some footage. I'm not sure if it's what Kekalainen brought in or if the head of officiating brought something in or what it was. But the GMs don't think cross-checking is an issue, and they think it's being called well enough. So when people talk about officiating, GMs think the officiating is just fine. They don't have a problem with it. And we can talk about how much of a disconnect there is between fans and the people in charge of the game, but there it is. I agree with Jarmo Kekalainen on this. I think the amount of cross-checking that goes is insane. I've talked about it in reviews where you can count them, and especially when you get to playoffs, where you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll just count them, where it's a defenseman in front of the net, and it's like 10 of them. Guy will get knocked down, and he'll just be cross-checking the guy repeatedly in the back. Referee's just standing there watching, and I'm like, that's a cross-check. And it does cause injuries, because you're getting a stick drilled into the small of your back in a lot of these cases, or right at the base of your neck. And for a new fan who's just tuning in, let's say you're in Seattle, and you're like, I want to see what this hockey thing's about before we get a team, and you're trying to figure out the rules, don't watch the playoffs. Talked about it before, don't watch the playoffs. Because it's not going to tell you where the rules are, because you're going to be reading the rule book, if you can find it, and you're going to be looking at the TV and going, this isn't being called like that at all. Right. And so the NHL thinks it's fine the way it is. So for people who've been worried about, they're going to start calling everything and take everything out of the game, and no, they think everything's fine. So I do think cross-checking is ridiculous. I remember back to the slashing and hooking and holding era of the dead puck era, and it was ridiculous. And they took that out of the game. It's nowhere near, it will never get back to where it was. Some of the slashes that I've seen called as penalties do tend to be kind of ridiculous right now. But I think to myself, okay, so what's worse? Smacking a guy's stick with your stick, and then it breaks, because it may have already been half broken anyway. Sometimes they break the stick, and I'm like, that wasn't hard enough that had to have been a broken stick. But as soon as the stick breaks, the referee's arm goes up. But you can cross-check a guy in the back of the neck, and it's more of a love tap. It's a stick in the neck. So they don't think it's an issue. And this comes back to everybody talking about the Chara and the stick and they don't think it's an issue. So as long as the GMs don't think there's a problem, that's where the NHL's heads are at with it. All right. So there you go. Bit of a longer news of the day video today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support and for watching. I will talk to you again soon.